Thank you. Welcome to everybody who came a long way to be with us today, especially those who flew all the way in from Switzerland and Italy. Welcome to all the representatives from the embassies. Some of our fellow farmers, some of the local farmers got lost on the campus, and we are quickly hunting them down to bring them in the meeting too. This is the southernmost tip of our farming area in South Africa. Well, you can go a little further south. So not all of us come to this campus that often. Professor Dani Brink, who's the Dean of this Faculty of Agri-Sciences, thank you so much for always being available for us, not for much more than just the agricultural advice you so often give to us, but also for sharing this kind of facility and for your hospitality. We really appreciate. Colleagues, this is the Farmers' Dialogue of the G20. The idea is to make sure that an authentic farmer's voice is also heard in the policy-making space in G20. It's nothing new. We've done it a few times before, both in G20 and in G7. And the reason for this is so that the policymakers can also hear what the farmers want in terms of policies. And of course, if you are in the business of influencing policies, of doing advocacy, it's important to have policies. And amongst farmers, it is not that easy to develop policies. It's our crown jewels, is policy documents, because you need consensus to have that. So today we are going to address 4 topics, and we are going to do so in 2 hours. It's more or less 30 minutes per topic. And for that reason, we have asked that we restrict our interventions to 3 minutes per topic, both those who take part in person and digitally. I have some assistants to show me if there's a digital hand that's put up also to make an intervention. How this will work is there's no speeches, there's no formal introductions. I will just introduce the topic because this is a dialogue. The purpose is to hear the voices of farmers. After this, we will make a summary of all the deliberations today and distribute it to all the participants. It will give you an opportunity to interrogate those the positions taken here. And based on that, we will distribute a first draft. Then 2 weeks later, a second draft, after which we will table a document at the G20 in November on these 4 topics or any other topics which might surface during the course of our deliberations here. I want to ask those who are attending in person, when you want to make an intervention, just take this little machine in my hand so that there's proper sound on the recording and speak into it. Actually, that you're supposed to put it on your jacket or so. I think this is good enough. I was waiting for AJ, the president of Afasa, to do. I understand, so that they are hunting him down now with the live location. He was supposed to do the formal welcoming. We will give him the opportunity tonight at the dinner to do so. So on behalf of AJ and all of us, the farmers' organizations of South Africa, Bennie is also here from TLU SA, the oldest farmers' organization on our continent. We want to sincerely welcome you, both in our country and here on this campus. The first topic we are going to discuss is the one on family farming. And already from Coldiretti's side, we got an indication that the intervention will be cross-cutting, not limited to family farming, because some of our topics really has an impact on the other topics too. So I'm going to allow more than the 3 minutes for that. But just about the topic itself, we are in the middle of the decade for family farmers. It was launched by the FAO in 2019 and it will run until 2029. And the rationale behind this decade for family farming is that all over the world, big farmers are growing bigger and bigger. Smaller farmers are dropping out of the industry. This is how it works. It's because of the advantages of the economy of scale. But you know, where will it lead us? Already in certain parts of the world, the prevailing business model for farming, for food production, became corporate production. And when big companies start to farm, then the rural spaces run dry because big corporates do not use the local lawyer, the local bookkeeper, the local agent for fertilizers and agrochemicals. They do not support the infrastructure of the local small town. And then small towns fall over. I farm in a district which have become a battlefield of fallen towns. And this, while family farming is really the oldest profession in the world, 11,000 years old, it is still the biggest profession in the world, still the best organized profession in the world. Hence, our deliberations today, it's a product of organized agriculture. But smaller and medium-sized farmers, the typical family farm, can only survive if it remains profitable and if it remains sustainable and if it remains efficient. And just like we cannot make water run uphill, we can pump it uphill, but if we leave it, it will run back again. We will never see the shift of the movement of agricultural products, food and fiber, from less efficient countries to more efficient countries. It will always be the other way around, or production systems. So the question for us is how to ensure that there is still a viable space in our agricultural economy for family farmers. How do we make this model survive? How do we compete? And the idea is to pool the wisdom from across the globe and to share experience and knowledge and technologies, because it's a challenge facing all the corners of the globe. It's really about ensuring that there will still be a rural alternative to city life and a bit of a pushback against the forces of urbanization. Can I ask the president of Coldiretti, who indicated that there is an intervention from their side, is the Ettore Prandini, is he online?
Yeah, I am.
Welcome. Great to see you again.
Nice. Dear colleagues and dear friends, first I wish to thank Theo, the Jager and the Saai for organizing this farmers dialogue. For us, it's very important. And to greet all the farm leaders from across the world present today. Last year at the G7 farmers meeting in Syracuse, Italy, we adopted a declaration that reaffirmed the absolute link between food security and food sovereignty, the urgency to support innovation starting from farmers' needs, and the importance of trade rules based on reciprocity, transparency, and stability. That declaration reflected the challenges and aspirations that farmers share across continents. Today, it's a very important day. In the G20 framework, we have the opportunity to expand that path, not as the vision of just some countries, but as the voice of farmers and farm leaders globally, who, despite their different cultures and territories, share the same needs, feeding their families and communities, living with dignity from their work, and preserving the land for future generations. In the present context, escalating trade wars, geopolitical tension, armed conflicts, farmers are builders of peace. How? Keeping rural communities alive, safeguarding biodiversity, promoting food security and social cohesion, and creating bridges across nations, and trade, when fair, based on reciprocity and transparency, becomes not only an economic tool, but also a guarantee of economic stability and fundamental contribution to food security. Economic sustainability is essential. Without sustainable and competitive farms, there is not resilience, no generational renewal, no innovation. Farmers must remain competitive locally, nationally, internationally, to ensure strong agriculture and provide safe and affordable food to an increasing population. Family farmers are the pillars of agriculture globally. They produce most of the world's food, safeguard biodiversity, and sustain rural communities, supporting them in the only way to guarantee food security and food sovereignty for present and future generations. This dialogue demonstrates that farmers are ready to stand together in the global arena. Our message is clear. In a divided world, family farmers can unite people and communities. Without family farmers, there is no food security, no food sovereignty, no peace. Thank you.
To hear the voice of the Italian farmers too. That is one of the oldest agricultural traditions, which is so well preserved. More interventions. Please assist me, Francois, also to see if there are digital hands up. Interventions on family farming. Welcome, AJ. We are so glad that you found the place. No more interventions on family farming. So are there no digital hands? I see one, Rob Larew, NFU, USA. Welcome, Rob. Can we switch there to
Hello,
Rob?
just testing my audio. Can you hear me, Theo?
We can hear you, but yeah, there we see you too. Hi.
Okay. Great. I would first also echo the appreciation to the farmer and rancher organizations in South Africa for helping to host this important dialogue, and also extend my welcome to all the other farmer voices from around the world. In addition, I certainly lend myself with the important words from Coldiretti on farmer and food security and sovereignty here, and wanted to speak just a moment, maybe going a little bit further on this issue of the need for independent family farmers. In a world right now where we are continuing to see a monopolization of much of agriculture. It is everywhere that we as farmers are working, from the equipment that we need to buy and to use, to the fertilizer, to the seeds, and in some cases, even the livestock ownership, and then into the markets that we sell into. Too often, there are too few corporate monopolies or near monopolies that really put the independence of family farmers at a big disadvantage. One notion that I hear too often and that I strongly reject is the idea that whether it's because of the nature of the economies of scale, as we know, and that the larger you are, either as a company or as a farm, that it certainly holds some advantages. However, Theo, as you and others have talked about, we know that the impact is so negative on the rural communities and other families within that community, and ultimately to that big issue of food security. Therefore, the notion that I reject is that this is the natural course of being. The reason why we are gathered today is to make sure that lawmakers hear that, because I would argue that a country either has adopted policies to help support food security and, by nature, independent family farmers within their country, or they have chosen to not have policies supporting independent family farmers, and by extension are helping to erode food security and sovereignty and the importance of those rural communities there. So as we talk today about issues related to digitization and privacy issues associated with that, across livestock, climate, etc., this issue of the monopolization of agriculture in this global space is an issue that impacts all of those conversations that we're going to have. And so I would strongly urge us to continue to think of ways to make sure that lawmakers in the context of the G20 here understand that they collectively have an opportunity to either choose to adopt policies and positions that help support independent family farmers and ranchers, or they are choosing to help support the erosion of those factors there. And so, again, I welcome the conversations today. I believe that this monopolization of agriculture in the food space is one of the most important ones of our current time, even as we talk about trade, climate, and all the other challenges as well. So thank you so much, Theo, and I will turn back for the rest of the dialogue.
Thank you, Rob. Of course, National Farmers Union in the USA is in the front trenches in the battle for family farmers and against the centralization of power and capital in the value chains. And thank you for that. We take a lot of cues from you. Bennie, you have an intervention on family farming.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Theo, and all the delegates and from all the countries. It's a privilege for us to interact with you regarding the importance of family farmers. Now, from our side, TLU South Africa, Organized Agricultural Union for Commercial Farmers, we say that family farming is the backbone of our rural communities and indispensable link to global food security. They not only contribute to food production, but also keep entire communities economically, socially, and culturally vibrant. Family farming ensures food security and diversity. They produce quality food, adapt to local conditions, and keep the food supply chains, short and reliable. They promote economic stability. Income earned on family farms is reinvested locally, not as if the big corporates, they normally don't get their stuff from the big cities. So they help the rural area to stay alive, and that's a very important thing. They sustain schools, villages, and service providers locally. They create social and environmental value. Family farmers preserve generations of knowledge and manage natural resources responsibly with a long-term vision. However, this system, as we all understand and experience, is under severe pressure. Uncertainty created by an unsure policy environment. And that is for us crucial. You can look into any problem that we experience, you can take it back to the policy environment. And because we need support and the policy environment that give us stability for all the farmers, small, big, doesn't matter who you are. The corporate dominance is a problem, limited access to finance and markets, safety and security issues for farmers all over the world, but especially in our country, we experience this very intensively, as well as complex succession processes threaten their continued existence. The fact that there is food on consumers' tables can be seen as the greatest asset any country has. Take that away, and anarchy and chaos will quickly break out. Therefore, any responsible government will realize that the greatest asset their country has is the commercial farmers who produce food for the markets. In the light of that, governments should use all means at their disposal to keep their farmers in production. And if you have small-scale farmers, as we do experience in South Africa, we should do our utmost best to make those people also profitable, that they can be sustainable. That's so important. Therefore, we would like to make the following proposals. Policy frameworks that give family farmers equitable access to markets, credit, and land. That should be addressed. We should need, as you actually mentioned now, Rob, the policy. That's so important. Then innovation and value addition, including digital platforms so that family farmers can reach consumers directly, and then youth training and follow-up support to encourage a new generation of farmers and ensure continuity. Protecting family farms is not just a local matter. It is a global investment in stability, food security, and sustainability. If agriculture is alive in a country, there is a foundation that can cause the country to live too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bennie. There's a request when you hold the mic, don't close the microphone. Yeah, those of us who are on the wrong side of 60 would not have known that. I'm going to ask that we continue with the second topic on livestock. And of course, that does not close the topic of family farming, because as we already heard in the interventions up to now, these topics have everything to do with each other, and there are a lot of cross-cutting truths. So I also want to open the discussion on livestock. And what this is all about is the fact that livestock farming is about 11,000 years old, but never has it been under more pressure than now. And the pressure comes from three angles. There is a pressure on health issues in the context of One Health, and especially after the publishing of the Eat Lancet report, was that 4 years ago, 6 years ago, where there is a very clear push against animal-based proteins. But there's also a frontier in this battle on climate, biodiversity, nature, and of course, there's also the moral pressure on the livestock industry. They don't want us to kill stuff, to eat it. And the alternative protein market has seen a lot of investment lately, whether it is plant-based, insect-based, or lab-grown. Now, in a number of our countries, we have recently seen new regulations which actually which paves the way for these alternative proteins to take part of the market share. Even here in South Africa, we have recently seen these regulations. giving these products the right to be labeled in meat formats. In South Africa, we have this thing, braaivleis, which we would have ate to make you taste, but you can even call plant-based alternatives braaivleis in terms of these regulations. And in the shops on shelves, they can both confuse consumers, but they can also make a dent in us as farmers, our accessibility to that market. A global issue like this needs global solutions. And this is why we found it necessary to have this discussion today. You see, making or manufacturing or growing proteins from something which is not from animals, that's not the family farmer's business. That is done by companies and in laboratories. And it adds to the centralization of power in the value chain. So as G20 farmers, we must ensure that we are not caught by surprise like it was the case 6 years ago with the publication of the Eat Lancet report. I believe Eat Lancet 2.0 is due for the first week in October. And in the next wave of pressure against meat and eggs and milk, we must have a defense plan on it. Hence, this discussion on livestock and animal-based proteins. I wonder, Professor Ederer, can I ask you to open the discussion for us? Professor Ederer is the chairman of the scientific committee of the World Farmers Organization, and he did the negotiations at the Food System Summit in Rome 3 years ago in Workstream 2, which was on this topic.
Thank you, Chairman Theo, for giving us scientists a voice at this table as well. We should be having a golden era for farmers around the world. Technology promises the farmers to produce more food from less resources than ever before. The tools of artificial intelligence today can make meaningful data and machinery available at the fingertips of every farmer, from the lands of the Mississippi to the lands of the Mekong, from the Northern Cape to the Cape of the Good Hope. Such data and machines support the farmers what and where and when to plant and how to bring the harvest to market. Such data and machines support the farmers how to feed their livestock animals, how to breed and grow them, how to keep them healthy and well. We see cooperative growers of mango in Ghana are using airborne drones for precision spraying. We see sheep farmers in Scotland using wearable sensors to monitor the health of the animals. The dream to provide every global citizen with enough meals that are rich in vitamins, minerals, and proteins to provide the right energy for daily well-being does not need to be a dream anymore. The farmers of the world today have the means to produce enough food and produce it at affordable prices so that the scourge of hunger and malnutrition can be made to disappear. Not in a far distant future, but today, if we want it so. Unfortunately, farmers today are faced with a new threat. It is the volatility, unpredictability, and ideological seal of governments and regulators, much more than the elements which are preventing the harvests we could have. We are experiencing national selfishness like never. There are several prominent governments who work actively to reduce their production of food with the aim to stop exports, especially valuable animal source foods, even while the world needs more of it. This selfishness rides on the pretext of some mythical environmental dogma and falsified data. And if you think that this is a rich statement, we at the Scientific Council of the World Farmers Organization are just preparing a document that is outlining and proving exactly this point. As a result, far too many governments are preventing the use of appropriate technologies which would be raising productivity and protect our resources at the same time, especially so in livestock farming. Make no mistake, these kind of evidence, these kind of crippling policies are not supported by the scientific evidence. Animal source foods are nourishing, not dangerous. Livestock farming done right is preserving the ecological balance, not harming it. You may refer to my colleagues, Professors Frederick Larew, Alice Stanton, Andrew Menton, Neil Mann, and so many others who worked out the nourishment table on the important role of livestock in our meals. Or refer to the work of Pablo Manzano, Michael Leal, Jason Roundtree, Daniel Merkmans, and numerous others on ecology. Refer to the website of aleph2020.org or our series of articles in Animal Frontiers on the societal role of meat in livestock. At the United Nations Food System Summit 4 years ago, for the Sustainable Livestock Coalition of Action, a text was agreed upon which highlighted the positive and productive contribution of livestock farming to a global food system that can provide enough for all. The Dublin Declaration, based on proceedings of this summit, was signed by more than 1,200 scientists from around the world. The Dublin Declaration called for governmental policy to be strictly based on scientific evidence only, instead of being victim to simplification, reductionism, or zealotry. If governments are in doubt on their right path to take, they can call on any of these 1,200 scientists at any time and ask for their support so that farmers may be allowed to use all the very best technologies to feed our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ederer. Now, there's a principle which we must confirm amongst farmers. You see, if we complain that policies are not based in science, we only have that right if our own policies are based in science. And when the science shows us the red card, we must get out of the field. This is why we have set up a scientific council in the World Farmers Organization to ensure that our own policies are also science-based. But as you say, we are running more and more into policies which are based on ideology rather than science. Luigi from Coldiretti, Italy, I give you the floor on this topic.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a few comments. As you said, livestock has been under attack for really many years. And this attack was based, especially in Europe and in other countries like Europe, not on scientific evidence. And this is why the Dublin Declaration was so important. It was the first time where the discussion was basic, not on ideology, but on scientific evidence. That is what we need. We know, and you especially know, in different African countries, how much important livestock is, not only for family farmers, but also for the family. One cow, thanks to one cow here, one family can survive. So in Italy, as a Coldiretti, we decided to fight against ideology and misleading communication for the consumer. There is big interest behind this attack to livestock. Big interest of a multinational company that invest in so-called alternative products and in synthetic beef, lab-grown beef. And so in Italy, we decided to have the first law in Italy, in Europe, the first law in Europe, but also many countries, I think to some states also in US, that adopted this new law, not against, for a correct implementation of lab-grown meat. It's clear that lab-grown meat is the opposite of family farmers. It's not in the hands of a million of farmers, in the hand of probably 2, 3 multinational worldwide. And so we agree with our government to have this ban for lab grown until at European level is implemented the principle, precautionary principle. We open to these products once that we understand that there are clear evidences on the effect on the health, on the human being, on the environment. They launch this product for the low impact on the environment. But there are a lot of scientific evidence now, starting from California University, and that the impact of energy for 1 kilo of synthetic beef is higher than the natural beef. So we want to wait until we have all the evidence, and then we have to take a very aware decision also for the social effects that concentrate in the hand of a few people and few multinational, the future of proteins could have. You mentioned also the alternative products, vegetable, or also in this case, we have nothing against our farmers produce vegetables, so we are in favor, but we cannot accept the misleading communication for a consumer. There is no reason, if you want to eat vegetable, to call it burger, steak. And so also on this point, for the first time as a first country in Italy, in Europe, Italy adopted a law against this kind of denomination. Now we are trying to implement at European level. We want transparency, we want precautionary principle, and we want instruments that all the family farmers can share, not in the hands of a few multinationals. This is our point of view.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no reason why the bean farmers or the vegetable farmers can't just call their products excellent vegetables or beans. Why do they want to call it meat?
Yeah.
Before I give the floor to AJ Mthembu from Afasa, can I ask if there's a digital hand that was raised for an intervention? If there's none, AJ is the president of Afasa, the African Farmers Association of South Africa, and our sisters organization as a member of the World Farmers Organization.
I hope I'm holding it right. I've realized that others, Bennie, they close the mic. Bennie must learn this technology. And you've heard that it's a technology that you must use as family farmers to produce more and be more efficient in the process. Chairperson, thank you so much, and greetings to everybody. To our colleagues from all over the world, we appreciate this opportunity to be here. Chair, I think I will combine two things. I'll start with the family farming, then combine it with the livestock, because for me, they work hand in glove. Now, as Afasa, we represent the majority of our farmers, our family farmers. You would understand that the survival of the family has been on agriculture. People have to plant basically for their own consumption. Then eventually they ended up providing the market with that which was access to what they have produced. So the primary production has always been on the basis or on the background of family farming. And as a result, it grows from there. Now, if, for instance, you move from original to artificial proteins, definitely that requires a laboratory. And family farmers can own a laboratory, and yet they can own a cattle for them to produce. So indirectly, when we move to artificial, it's such a pity that artificial produce, they seem to take a center stage on the basis that maybe it is easier to make them or it is quicker to make them. But also the other part, the other side of it is the health part of it. Remember that in family farms, firstly, we deal with organic food. That's where organic food comes from, because we know what we put in the soil and we know how to take care of the soil so that the soil in return could take care of us. Once you destroy the very soil that needs to produce food for you, just because we are trying to meet the demand of the market, it's a short-term solution which will have a long-term dire consequences. Also, one thing that is important again on the family farming is indigenous knowledge. We've kept this knowledge from our forefathers as to how best do we grow healthy food, because it doesn't help to have quantity at the expense of quality food. You will discover that in most of the time, the food that we are eating, remember, we are what we eat. And the more we don't consume the right food, the more we get even the diseases that we are talking about today. So there is a collaboration between the food and the pharmaceutical laboratories again. So this time we've got pharmaceutical who are producing medication to take care of the diseases that will be now be created even by the very food that we are consuming. I think, therefore, it will be very important that as family farmers, we stand together. I know that we produce food. Here in Western Cape, the majority of food that they produce is grapes. We've got what we call table grapes. Table grapes is what we eat on the table, and others, they make wine with it. I think we need to move with speed, not to be on the table like our grapes that we are producing, but to be at the seat at the table so that we engage robustly and very strongly on why we think family farms should be preserved, because they form the basis or the foundation of the farming in general. The theory that says there is more into lab than what is real, it's a theory that counteracts the creation itself. You know, when God created life, remember that we did not come up with the idea of life. Life is not our own intervention. Life is not our own creation. It's God that created life. And so it's God that also created food to sustain that life. And God will have created laboratory if that is what we needed. But when it comes to food, remember we come from soil ourselves. We soil, water, air, those natural resources are very critical in us getting the food that we are looking for. But we are not adverse to say technology has not advanced, but we are saying let us use the very technology that has advanced to produce more quality food, to produce a more quantity that is required, because now we can use digitalized information so that we don't take longer to produce what is needed. But we cannot get the technology to deviate from the basics where life begins, where family farmers are entrenched. So Chairperson, we feel very strong, especially as African farmers, that if the issue of family farm is not at the center stage, it means it's talking about food insecurity that is being provided by family farms. It talks about the issue of food sovereignty that will be depleted if this issue of family farms are not taken into consideration. We understand the issue of the challenges that we are still faced with, access to market, access to finance, but be that as it may, it's important that when we develop, we don't move away from the basics, which is the essence of life, that we do things broader and better, but keeping the fundamentals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have an indication of participation digitally? Any more intervention around the table? There was a very interesting move from Northern European governments to reduce their livestock. And those are in countries which are really the kings of dairy production. They have the best genetics. They passed legislation to reduce their national herds. But in the legislation itself, they refer to countries in Africa who might not be able to follow suit because they have a proteins deficit, such as Ethiopia. Now, the fact is that they want to do it for the sake of climate change because of the methane that's being released into the atmosphere as a very aggressive greenhouse gas. The fact is that in Ethiopia, we already have more cattle than people. Now, if you compare the cattle in a country such as the Netherlands with the cattle in Ethiopia, you'll see that the average production capacity of a cow, dairy cow in the Netherlands is around 32, 33 liters of milk per unit per day. That's what they want to reduce. On behalf of the climate that covers us all. But they say in Ethiopia, we can even have more cattle because we have the proteins deficit. Now, the average production per unit in Ethiopia is around 1.2 liters per day. That's what we want to have more of. So if you need to produce, say, 120 liters of milk for a village or an extended family in Ethiopia, you can service that with 100 Ethiopian cattle or 4 Dutch cattle. It simply doesn't make sense from a farmer's point of view. The real solution is to have more Dutch cattle in Ethiopia. So Dutch investment in Ethiopia. It does not happen because for investment, you need a policy environment which is conducive for profitable business. Instead of addressing the policy environment and making it more attractive for foreign investment, we are now trying to reduce the best genetics and have more of the poorest genetics. And then we say it will help the climate, which does not recognize international boundaries. This is why we say it is so important that we do advocacy also on an international level, beyond what we are doing in national farmers' organizations. Bennie?
Just try to handle the mic this time correctly. I hope so. Thank you, Theo. I want to say thank you, especially for Professor Ederer, but all the other previous speakers. For us, as we look into the reality, and AJ mentioned that as well, that we have a cultural command from out the Bible, that we have to run this world on a sustainable method and the way that we use this for food. That's very important. And I do not want to argue all the arguments that you mentioned. I say thank you for that. But I just want to ask some specifics that we should consider. And that is that we as farmers, I think the most important role players in the value chain are the farmers and the consumers. If we don't have a market, where are we going to take our food? And if they don't have farmers to produce those food, where are they going to get it? So we should build bridges between the consumers and the farmers, and they should be part of our battle to make sure that we keep our farmers in production. But the one thing I want to put on the table is that we need, and the policy makers should take notice of this, we need legal protection of the term meat. We should actually say that you cannot call anything else meat if it's not meat, as you mentioned already. And clear and honest labeling of synthetic products should be done. You mentioned that. And I think we should put emphasis on that as well. We are not in challenge with our fellow farmers that produce the vegetable stuff, but call it what it is. Don't make out of it meat because it's not meat. I think that's a very important thing. And then strict food safety testing for this alternative proteins, creating in laboratories. What is going on there? Is it safe for the consumer? I don't know. I haven't got any knowledge about that. I think a lot of research should be done on that as well. And support and trade protection for local farmers to keep our livelihood intact for the rural communities. That's very important. And then raising awareness of the benefits of real meat. You mentioned that, and I think that's very important. And to protect food security, culture, and local economies, the policy environment must make a clear distinction between real meat and synthetic and plant-based alternatives and support the livelihoods of cattle farmers. And then differentiate between the real brand food, meat, and counterfeits in all aspects. Cannot allow the misuse of the name meat for something that is not meat. Meat producers must jealously guard over the uniqueness and goodwill of the term meat. And government should also respect that with the needed legislative support. I think that we should put some pressure in that direction and put some emphasis that they can call it what they want, but don't steal our name. Meat is meat. Thank you.
Thank you, Bennie. Any more intervention on the topic of livestock and animal-based proteins? Of course, we are not going to close this topic. We are just going to have it merged in the next one too, which is digitalization, AI, and food security. It's all about data. Data is the new gold in agriculture. And everybody is mining for that gold. Everybody else in the value chain, whether upstream or downstream, relies on the data, and the data becomes the very air we breathe, especially in precision farming. You know, data is the precision part of precision farming. The ability to measure and to count and to make everything count, to make every seed, every drop of water, every square inch of your pastures or your orchards or your fields count. And the technologies, whether it's big data, blockchain, the Internet of Things, robotics, satellite and drone technology, and artificial intelligence, all of these is bound and is already changing the way we are farming. In the next generation, their experience of this profession will be radically different than my generation because of this technology or digitalization revolution. Actually, many of us have forgotten how to farm without it. But unfortunately, the development of new technologies, especially in the digital space, remains faster than the development of the regulatory environment. The regulatory environment only follows. And none of us can really keep up with the pace of the development of these technologies. And this brings a lot of new issues on the table of farmers, such as the ownership of the data. One of the big tech billionaires in the USA once said to me, if you farmers lose the ownership of your data, you will never be in a position to buy it back again. Don't let it drop out of your hands. But you know, we are farmers. We are not so strong in that space. We need to partner up with those who have the capacity to understand and to manage these new technologies. It's also about the integrity of the data, about the purity of the advice you get from artificial intelligence if you move extension services, for example, into that space. It's also about accountability in cyberspace. Now, it is time to put our heads together as farmers across the globe to ask what exactly is our interest in this. If we cannot formulate it, if we cannot put our fingers on it, we cannot protect it and we cannot promote it. What do we want? And we need to share our experiences and our knowledge to make sure that it is evenly distributed across the globe. No use we gain in one corner of the world and lose in the other corner. Now, some national farmers organizations have already set up their own storages, their own data centers. Others have developed their own AI platforms. In Saai, we are very proud of the product Ederer. It used to be High Saai, and now we started to share it also across our continent to put it in the hands of smallholder farmers as a kind of an extension service. But we harvest a lot of data behind it. We've picked up some animal diseases 6 months before governments declared those affected areas, simply with the data behind the AI platform. We need to take this also to the smartphones in the hands of those of our colleagues who are still farming with hand hoes. This will be the leapfrogging they've been looking forward to go beyond only self-reliance, to go beyond subsistence farming, to turn smallholder farming into businesses by mechanizing it and modernizing it and digitalizing it. Now, how to approach the policymakers on this? This is the topic of our discussion on digitalization and agriculture. Fortunately, I was still born with thicker fingers, but it does not fit onto small buttons on smartphones. But I can tell you that there's a new generation of farmers out there who were born with this and who love it and to embrace the profession of farming because of the way it is being digitalized up to now. I would love your interventions from elsewhere in the world and hear how are we going to ride this wave and get the most out of it. Professor Ederer, you are one of the masters of big data in agriculture.
I think we need to distinguish here 2 levels. So the first level is that farmers will have access to this data, and it's an intelligence service. So it gives the farmers better advice on when and what and where to plant and at what time to bring it to the market and so on. That is going to be improving our current business model for how to farm. And these are very important improvements that every farmer will be having to use. There is not going to be any farmer who will not be using these tools in the very near future, because the decision-making that these big data tools gives us is just so much better. But there is a second pool of innovation that we're only beginning to glimpse now. And that second pool of innovation is how we're going to restructure all these value chains. How are we going to restructure financing agriculture on the basis of these tools? Because what these tools are able to give us is what I'm calling engineering trust. How to engineer trust into the system. 150 years ago, I didn't need to trust data because I could trust my neighbor. But today, My neighbor in my value chain might be sitting 10,000 kilometers away. And my source of financing might be sitting 20,000 kilometers away. And my customer might be sitting 30,000 kilometers away. So how will these people who are so far away to my farm be able to trust me? That the apple, the milk, the piece of meat that I just produced is what I claim it to be? How will that bank, that source of finance, be able to tell that what I am actually said I'm producing is actually being produced? So that engineering of trust, of trustworthiness, that can be reestablished through these data, through digital twins, through data density. We will be able to access complete new ways of financing agriculture, financial institutions, financial networks. We will be able to have new methods of verification. We will be able to have new methods of understanding what resources are being used, how productively, what kind of food. Now, here is the call for the policymakers. Get out of the way. Do not stifle this innovation by insisting on models of interaction from the last century. If we want to make use of these technologies, then allow entrepreneurs and innovators and new service providers to come up with new models and enable these innovations. If we stick in the methods and the tools of the last century, we will not able to tap into that pool of technologies and innovations that can make our world a much better place.
Thank you. More interventions? I see there's Rob Larew. Welcome, Rob. USA.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to first, lend myself to some of the remarks before, particularly this comment most recently about the need to make sure that farmers will have access to tools and innovation to help them adapt in an increasingly and rapidly changing world. But I think that maybe to tune the point about governments getting out of the way, I think that governments instead need to be watching this very closely and going back to the central question about independent farmers and ranchers. Data, as we know, is also an incredibly valuable commodity, not only in ways that it can help farmers, but in ways that those who have and control and own that data can ultimately use it for financial gains through markets, et cetera. And so as farmers who may be playing into markets where the manufacturers of their harvesting equipment already know precisely what yields, what delivery dates, all of the data that can help them gain advantages in the marketplace, continue to erode the independence of family farmers and put them at a economic disadvantage as well. So I think it is important to continue to make sure that as farmers, we want to adapt. We want to continue to evolve and innovate. And the use of ever-increasing amounts of data is an important piece of this. But questions around privacy and how the information is ultimately used is a question, I think, for governments to not to put barriers to innovation, but to make sure that ultimately food security, food sovereignty, independent family farmers are central in that innovation itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I see there's also a hand up from Keith Curry from the Canadian Farmers Association. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks, Theo, and thank you to everyone involved in putting this on. I think it's an important conversation that we're having. I just want to follow up where Rob was, and that as much as governments can be frustrating and hold farming back, in the case of AI and technology, it's not about when it's coming, it's already here. So the role I feel we really need government in place to protect us is to make sure that we have policy in place that ensures transparency, but also ensures integrity in the system. Farmers are around the world are afraid about their data compromising, or someone stealing their data and compromising their operation. So government can play a role here through policy to make sure that that integrity stays in place, so that this technology is used effectively around the world. And so I think we need to be careful about saying government get out of the way. I think we need to have some oversight from government to make sure that the right structures are put in place to govern how this technology is used going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's still very, very early there in Canada. Next, Dirk Hannekom is the CEO of Agri All Africa, organizing South African and Zimbabwean farmers who are farming in 44 other countries in Africa, on digitalization in that smallholder space.
I'm the CEO of Agri All Africa, and it's really a privilege for me to address you today. I want to focus my approach here today on the angle of digitalization, innovation and data, and very specifically as it pertains to the one resource of which we cannot do without, and that's water. Water critical, not only us in South Africa as the drier part of the subcontinent, but some other places as well. The irregularity thereof and sound planning becomes part and parcel of a farmer's life. There are three principles that I want to share here with you. The first one is a plea in this dialogue, which were crystallized for many, many years of experience, and it has to do with connectivity. Connectivity must be regarded as an essential infrastructure development, like roads, like rails, like bridges, like communication, electricity, and access to markets. Without connectivity, it's not possible today to do precision farming. And there are many, many options available today that's cheaper and sometimes completely free. But for that to happen, the connectivity for governments who can shake off narrow ideological and often selfish and self-enrichment approaches have become a focal point for us. We need to work together as a team, and we need to do it within a system of integrity. It must be important to empower the broadest basis of rural entrepreneurs and workers. And that is for this, not only for the selected few to financially benefit from forced shareholding or unjust profiteering, it is across the board. Secondly, farmers must always retain ownership of their own data, even if it's shared with service providers in the sector. Because if your farmer loses their ownership of their own ideas, their own data, they will never be able to gain it back again. Data and connectivity bring the stability or the ability to measure, to count, to integrate beyond the capacity of any farmer, and the stability that it brings for a long-term planning process that we need. If we can do that, every drop of water will be counting, will mean something. Every square inch of our gardens and our pastures or our fields. And if it is the precision part of precision farming, and without precision farming, it's simply the longer possible to be competitive producers if we follow this route. Lastly, to farm in Africa is always an expensive exercise, simply because the lack of infrastructure and access to essentials of maintenance and timely delivery, it's always a challenge. In our case, Agri All Africa, we have partnered up with a number of companies in a consortium approach, also in the mechanization space, such as with Rinki, our sponsor of communication technology, and for the dinner here today. With Rinki, a company that focus on ensuring that our farmers across the continent have access to both the latest technology and also the experience and expertise and opportunities for learning and empowerment to raise our crops And that's under irrigation. They're nature-friendly, sustainable, maintainable, and adaptable to all conditions, and proven themselves that to be there for the long haul. Thank you for you as an audience to listen to the few ideas that I've shared with you, but specifically also to Rinki for not only sponsoring today's dinner, but also to go out of their way in assisting farmers in a professional and a cost-effective way.
Thank you, Dirk. Rinki is also, of course, Patrick there in the corner. Thank you for making it possible for us and to hosting us tonight for the dinner too, Patrick. You beg to differ on something, Professor Ederer?
I hear the call from my respected colleagues very much on the necessity and the role of governments to help farmers in their data sovereignty against big corporations. And this is a very real issue, but I beg to differ that governments can have any meaningful role to play in this. For two reasons, really, I don't think that governments are any solution in this space. First of all, the pace at which this innovation progresses far outpaces the speed at which governments can react and act. And secondly, we are dealing with international, multinational value chains, and governments, by definition, only respond to their national electorate. So if you want a government response, you will get only a national response, and those national responses will inevitably not be compatible enough with each other. The solution here to that real problem of data sovereignty has to be found within the farmers' community itself. It has to be found among farmers' unions, among farmers' cooperatives, among innovative ways for farmers to cooperate with each other and to integrate with each other across national boundaries. There's the solution, how farmers can protect their data sovereignty. Do not ask for governments, ask at yourself how to organize yourself to achieve data sovereignty. In my observation, there are two areas in the world that are most innovative in creating new structures, new institutions of how to channel finance and innovation and knowledge among farmers. Those two regions are India and Africa. Some of the most innovative business models, and I want to highlight here, for instance, Babangona in Nigeria, Ethio Chicken in Ethiopia, or Glad Prosperity in Uganda. In my global observation, these are path-breaking, really innovative institutions that bring finance and knowledge and advanced data into the hands of the farmers, and they happen here in Africa on the ground. This is where the innovation frontier is, and they do not need governments to do what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Luigi?
Thank you. Yes, I think the issue is very, very sensitive, it's serious, and you say that obviously who controls data will control food and food democracy for the future. So it's very, very important. And as you say, the risk is that data today are collected for free through different instruments, agriculture machineries, sensors, satellites, and then few multinational process this data and give back not for free and not in a very independent way. So this is the issue. How to react? I fully agree with the professor that governments can help only in a limited way. 63% of our cloud is in the hands of 2 or 3 big tech international big tech. So regulation, and in Europe, we are trying with US to apply some big tech regulation. It's not very easy. But the answer is exactly what you say, integration. And we have an example in Italy. In Italy, we have 90% of a small and medium enterprise, very small agriculture farms, but we were able to have the highest added value in agriculture in Europe, 45 billion euro of added value, also with so many family farmers. And we were able to integrate a model where big company and big processing company are not against the family farmers, but try to consolidate the supply chain. And we share data management, sustainable instruments, and we have also long-term commitment. So we are sure that if family farmers invest, we are able, as also processing industry, to collect this product at a fair price. And one of the agreement is the data management. One of the contracts is with, I don't know, one company is called Bonifiche Ferraresi, and through this management data, through this contract with thousands of farmers, we are able to cover with this data more than almost 2 million hectares. That for Italy is huge. So this integration could be the future in a different form.
Yeah, indeed, they say the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. AJ, can I pass it on to you?
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe we may want to balance between the two. Remember that at some point, one of the key issues that we are dealing with here, we want the lawmakers to deal with issues that affect us as farmers. And sometimes it becomes difficult to do your operation outside of government. Yet on the other side, it becomes frustrating to wait for government processes. Indeed, the regulatory environment is a bit slower than how the technology is moving. But I think what we'll need to do, we'll need to have a regulatory framework that is farmer-led. We must be the one indicating, because if we leave the gap, they will define it for us. Then eventually we'll have to follow that. I think we need to take an opportunity to say, because we're in the space, what is it that we think will work best in our environment? Because most of the time, we wait until they've got something on the table, then we want to work against that. And it will be better if we say, because now this technology, we can see the speed at which it is moving. Then our duty would be to say, because it's working with us, it's working through us, it would be better that we define it how we want it to run. Because if we wait outside or try to do outside of government, at a point, the government will intervene. And when they intervene, they will intervene in a way that may not be working as how we want it to best operate. Secondly, I think we do need an integration of some sort between family farmers and corporate, because the digital space, you'll see, for instance, as we like it now on other positive things, the very laboratory developed protein will be promoted through the very same platform there. That will be saying, these are the things that are there. Because you see the technology, it becomes difficult because you pick some, you leave some in the process, but others use the very same one that you picked up to say, no. In fact, where things are now, when they push it on digital platform, people believe what they see more often. And eventually you'll have a narrative where people will begin to say, okay, maybe this seems to be better produced in the lab than the one that we have that is alive. So what I'm saying, it's important that we begin to drive our own narrative strongly so that by the time government joins us, they find us having put something together. But if we leave a gap, we might be chasing just after the train has left the station. I think maybe that's an advantage that we need to take care of. The advantage is quicker. We are farmers, we are more efficient, we are more resilient. Therefore, let's begin to outline with our professor how we see it, instead of leaving a gap until the government fills the gap, and then we try to undo that particular process. Thank you.
Brings us to the time where we will also integrate the last topic into our discussion, trade and food security. And when we talk trade, we also talk logistics, we also talk tariffs and stuff. It's all about the new definition for food security. Food security no longer means that any country produces everything it consumes. That's the ancient definition. Today, food security means that a country produces more of that in which it has a competitive advantage, so that it can exchange from the food basket for that in which it does not have a competitive advantage. Because Professor Ederer can produce bananas in Switzerland, but he needs to put up greenhouses. He needs to be able to control the temperature and the humidity and everything, and then they cannot compete against those who can just plant it in the field outside the house. The world became a very small place for farmers. Each farmer is every day in competition with the best other farmers in the world, because our products wash across international borders like water. And efficiency drives these markets. Efficiency is the name of the game we find ourselves in. And your competitiveness is absolutely linked to your ability to put the highest quality food on the shelves and shops at the lowest possible price. That's what competitiveness is all about. Now, this competitiveness is most often undermined by what we like to call in South Africa administered costs. Those costs which you cannot negotiate. Costs put on us by governments, like the cost of toll gates, the cost of legislative arrangements around wages, the cost of water, the cost of electricity and diesel. And in this regard, of course, the playing field is not level. Some is burdened with much higher administrative costs than others. Farmers are delivered to these costs and to the policymakers who fix them. That is politics beyond our own control. And then there are all these non-tariff barriers, which has nothing to do with the formal tariffs. We can write books about it in our neck of the woods here in Southern Africa when we try to do business with neighboring countries. This is a very, very dynamic environment. It changes nearly every day. We are very much annoyed as farmers by the unpredictability of it. And our problem in agriculture is that our products have a limited shelf life. You cannot just put it in storage until the environment is better again. Once you have harvested, you need to sell it. And this is one of the global issues in which, as AJ so eloquently stated, we are always leading, we are always reacting to policymakers. But what's the alternative? How do we take the initiative in this space? And what do we take to policymakers? Because we are farming in such different physical environments. No two farmers farm the same. And the farmers in no two countries farm the same. And no two continents do we farm the same. We must be very clear on what we want when it comes to trade policies. And yet, as I said right at the beginning, this anchors global food security. It hinges on trade. And no one of us, even if you're not an exporter, no one of us can ignore it. We have here amongst us the guy who leads up the World Farmers Market Coalition and who gave new meaning to that paradigm, Carmelo. And once he's done with his job in Italy, we plan to steal him and bring him to South Africa to shorten our value chains and limit the space between production and consumption. Carmelo, you care to take the first bite at the apple?
Thank you, Theo. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you ideas. I would like to move from what you said in the introduction of this meeting today, how to ensure profitable space for farmers in the economic world, and how to make it possible together with other topics that we have, and you mentioned the food security. Today, if the importance of data, according with the data of the United Nations, we have 800 million people in the world that live in a situation of food insecurity. And the majority of these people live in the rural area, all around the world. So it is something very strange that in the place where the food should be produced, the rural area, is the place where also the people are much more in food insecurity. We have never produced so much food as we produce in this period. And there are still people that are in food insecurity. We have lived in the period of globalization. Very good. We can share products from all over the world. Yes, now we are in a period where the trade barriers are on the top of the agenda, but there is a lot of freedom to move products from one part to another of the world. There are a lot of farmers that they can see their bananas go from their farm to the other part of the world, and they cannot sell their bananas in their farm because it is compulsory for them to sell their bananas to traders who will sell their banana to another traders who will sell to another traders who will bring these bananas to the other part of the world, but they cannot sell their banana outside the door of their farms. Why that? Because which is the definition of the farmers today? Who is the farmers today? Is the farmer still only the raw materials producers? Or the farmers can be also someone who process his product, who can sell his products, who can provide services for the society, who can provide the services for the community. What we are trying to do with the World Farmers Market Coalition, that is a very young association, but that has already 100 associations from more than 80 countries in the world, is to say that there is not just one solution to how to face the problem of food security, how to face the situation of the farmers in the world. There are many different options. And one of the options could be in the local food system. We need the global food system, but we need to invest also in local food system. We need to invest in a new definition of who is a farmer. There are still a lot of barriers, much more than the tariff barriers that we are discussing today globally, that don't give the chance to the farmers to go from the farm to the city in their country. The barriers that surrounding the cities in the modern cities face to the countryside are much more higher than the barriers that we have in the middle area 1,000 years ago. The farmers, they cannot go in the cities and they cannot sell directly their products. They have to use traders to go in the city. Why that? Why that? What we are trying to do, we started during the pandemic period. I run the foundation of Coldiretti, Fondazione Campagna Amica. We created more than 1,000 farmers market. We involve around 20,000 family farmers in Italy who every weekend sell directly their products to the consumers in the city. And during the first pandemic period, when the Italian government wants to close the farmers market because places of gathering, we started to connect with other people from all over the world, and we met people from the United States, people from Canada. They have the same system, people in other, and we created this association to help other people in the work and to raise the voice in favor of the local food system. We need to continue to work in a global system, but we need to invest much more in a global system. Farmers, they can work also in other economic systems. Do you imagine how many activities farmers, they can do together with the tourism sectors? Who do the tourism sectors in the rural area if not the farmers? And this can bring revenue to the farmers, and this can help the farmers to have a better revenue to stay, to continue to stay in the rural area. If we don't help the farmers to stay in the rural area, they will go in the city. And once they will go to the city, it will become larger. And then when there is no space in the cities, they move in another countries. The migration problems, the largest migration is not from the south, from the world to the north of the world. It's from the rural area to the cities. And if we want to stop it, we should invest much more in the local food system.
Thank you. Big value add to organized agriculture globally, the World Farmers Market Coalition, and it's a very interesting structure. We are proud in Saai also to be part of it. It's not that easy to put it in place. An important thing which Carmelo said was that there's enough food in the world. We've never produced more food. There's enough food in the world for everybody, but the food is not where the people are hungry, and it costs too much to get it there. And as long as it is more expensive to bring a container of grain down the Mississippi and across the Atlantic to Cape Town Harbor than to take it from Cape Town to Johannesburg or to Harare, we will sit with this kind of crisis. Hence, it makes a lot of sense to develop your market as close as possible to the farm itself. Any more interventions on trade? I know there is today in Geneva a discussion where the World Farmers Organization is also involved on trade at the WTO. There's also no hand digitally.
Thank you. In my viewpoint, I think that governments in a democracy do have two obligations. First of all, they have to look after the safety of the people in their country, but secondly, they have to create an environment where the private sector can do business, especially our farms as well. So the policy environment is very important. They have that tool in their hand, and they should create an environment where we as farmers can utilize the land on a sustainable manner so that we can produce food for the markets. And that is for us a big challenge. I think that we have different approaches all over the world because of the policies that differs from place to place. We actually have the opportunity that we can sell our produce direct to the consumers. We have a very long-standing market where our farmers bring their produce in Pretoria, and the consumers come and buy there straight from us. So it all depends what you can do. But at the end of the day, this all should be profitable. That is, profitability creates sustainability. And that is a big challenge. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to open up the perception regarding the food value chain to the consumers. And that is for us crucial, for us as farmers, to make sure that they get the best quality fruit in time, safe food, but for the best price, but also for us to have a price that we can be still profitable. And that's the balancing game that we need. And I think that we from our side in each country will have different approaches, and we should take notice of that. But all of us have that challenge to be positive and interact with our governments to create that specific area where we can do it. You know, the problem is, as we mentioned, Professor, about the government, I'm quite convinced that you are quite right that the government cannot catch up with the digital world. But when they create policies that you are not allowed to use it, and they keep it out of your country, then it's a problem. So the government's role is still there. As AJ also mentioned, they will fill that gap if you like it or not. And that's our concern. Government should actually focus on their two obligations. And then the private sector will bring the success. Thanks.
Until about 100 years ago, you had a very direct correlation between the ability of a region to produce food and the population density in that region. Because very simply, if that region did not produce enough food, people would just not live there. Very simple. But we are now living in a world where that principle does not apply anymore. Ask Singapore to be self-sufficient in food production. Ask Hong Kong, Dubai, Cairo, Karachi to be self-sufficient in food production. We now live in a globalized world where people live in areas where food cannot be produced or where it cannot be produced efficiently. Because we have a phenomenon called industrialization. We have a phenomenon called modern service economies. So the world's citizens' well-being fundamentally depends on food being traded. Because in so many places of the world, many people live for a variety of good reasons, and they depend on other places where food can be grown efficiently to ship it to them. So these places are typically in the moderate latitudes and a variety of other things. So you need a moderate climate, you need good rainfall, you need good soils. And if you apply these criteria, you're not left with that many places that can produce a large surplus of food. One of those places is Ukraine. So Ukraine has to be a huge food exporter to the rest of the world because you can produce food very well there, right? And Egypt will not be a food exporter. So we need open trade and referring to what I said in my beginning statement. If national governments and national farmers become selfish, a lot of people will go hungry in this world.
Of course, you're welcome.
Just a short reaction. I fully agree that some cities like Cairo, they cannot be self-sufficient with food. They can never be self-sufficient with food. But I do not agree that Egypt is not an exporter country. In Italy, we are full of tomatoes from Egypt, artichoke from Egypt. The problem is that these products are not sold in Cairo. So I do understand. I fully agree that the future of the food system is in trade. And I fully agree that the farmers from Egypt, they could export their tomatoes, their artichokes all over the world. I would prefer that they could take care before all to the population of Egypt and then to the rest of the world. Because today, all the farmers that are along the Nile, they produce for export. And the food who arrive in Cairo is imported food. This system, I'm not sure can work for a long time. I have been in Kenya 2 months ago. They are among the largest exporter of coffee and tea in the world, but they eat ugali, that is a mix of maize, 3 times a day, and they import all the ugali that they need to eat. Yes, trade is the future, but which kind of trade?
I had this rare privilege to visit more than 80 countries to visit farmers over the last 10 years. And it was very notable for me how poor our communication as farmers is. We don't communicate enough with each other. We don't communicate enough with other stakeholders in the value chain. And most important, we are not very good at communicating with our consumers. And we need them to trust us. If that relationship of trust between consumers and farmers, if that falters, then we are in trouble. But we already sit, even in South Africa, with the 2nd generation and elsewhere in the world, often with the 3rd generation of consumers in cities who no longer have an uncle or a grandfather somewhere on a farm. And the linkage between consumers, our clients, the most important people in our lives, those who buy our stuff, they don't know what's happening on the other side of the shelf in shops. And it's important for us to communicate with them. The most wonderful part of farmers markets, and I attend the farmers market of Bennie's organization every Saturday of my life, is that the consumer meet the farmer there. There's interaction. You can ask, why does it look like this? Can you do it like that? But you see, in a shelf in a shop, we now work with a better and better informed consumer, and they want to scan a QR code and they want to see exactly what we did in the production process. What kind of fertilizer did we put on here? What did we spray on it? How was this pig treated before we send it to the slaughterhouse? Because with their buying power, they want to influence that process, whether it is for climate or for biodiversity or whatever. There's nothing we can do to stop that. We must meet those standards. But what we can change is how they feel about us. We can only change that by better communication with them. Hence, we can learn from each other how to do it. We envy the 1,000 farmers markets in Italy. And it's not something we can just put in place. You grow it over time. The TAU farmers market is close to 40 years old. And apart from that, just teaching especially younger consumers what it takes to meet those standards. And it's going to cost us. It is something we can share with each other too. We've managed in South Africa to get a television series on sheep production, not something high-tech or anything, just the average sheep farmer. What's his life like? Became a very popular thing. For us, the big breakthrough was to introduce the real family farmer to the people in the cities who have never been on a family farm. I know it is important to be the president of an organization or the secretary general of an organization, but let me tell you, in a farmers organization, there is no more important function at this stage than a communications officer. Any more interventions on trade and markets? In Africa, our markets look a bit different than in Europe. We farm into 3 markets. There is a part of the market, and unfortunately, here in Southern East Africa, Central Africa, that's still the biggest part of the market, where the consumer who buy our products, she asks, what can I afford to feed my family today? Affordability is the biggest part. And it needs to be as close as possible to their house because the logistics also add to the cost. So they want to buy as cheap as possible. And that's usually starch, just something to fill up the stomachs. It is only when you break out of poverty and you move into the middle class market, for us, the local fresh produce markets, the local abattoirs, where the consumer would ask, what's the mix on the plate? How nutritious can I feed my family? And it's when you move into the affluent market, the wealthiest part of the market, that they want to know how was this produced, because they want to make an impact much wider than just buying the food. And they need free range and they need organic and that kind of stuff. But that is usually for us in Africa, part of the export market. And that's the tough criteria which you need to meet, global gap and Europe gap and that kind of stuff. Is there any more interventions digitally? Is there anyone from the far east to the far west in the world who still wants to make a remark before we close? Anyone around the table?
Follow the scientific evidence.
Oh, that's it.
Follow the scientific evidence, not the scientist. The evidence is what counts, not the scientist.
Very, very valid. I was once in a meeting in Rome with Professor Ederer, where in one of the debates, somebody said, but we have more than 100 scientists who signed under this declaration. And he said, it's not the number of scientists that matters. Bring the evidence. That's what matters. Thank you so much for taking part in this G20 Farmers Dialogue today. Thank you to everybody who took part digitally, and also those of you who sat around the table with us. Those who are here in person, you are all invited to the dinner this evening at the Volkskom base, very traditional, not very far from here. If you don't know how to get there, we can quickly give you a pin drop. We will be there at 6 o'clock for 6:30, and that promises to be the highlight of our dialogue. That's where it really opens up. So please be there. We will, in the meantime, make a summary of all the interventions. We will distribute it to you within the next 2 weeks. And then you are free to interrogate it. Ask those who said something, what did you mean by this? Feel free to differ. This is a very important part of our dialogue, where we ask each other the questions on it. And from the feedback on that, we will develop the first draft. There will then be a second draft before we will have a final document to table at G20 in November this year. Thank you very much. Those of you who are going to travel again, travel safe.